Are we set? So hi, I'm Nancy Snoke, and this is my talk about evolving your office's security culture. And it's a story-based talk, but that also looks at literature and such that's available too. So a quick look at who am I. I just started my own business this year, Magic Security LLC, to specialize in finding and fixing vulnerabilities in web and mobile applications. I couldn't decide whether I wanted to be a penetration tester or a developer, so I decided to do them both. Educationally, I got my Bachelor's of Science Engineering in Computer Engineering and Physics with a minor in Math at Tulane University up the street, and got a Master's in Computer Science, dropped out of my PhD program. And I'm on Twitter. That's my company email address, my company website, and my personal blog, in case anyone's interested. So, all the stories I'm going to tell are true stories where I've changed all the names to protect the insecure people. And so I have pseudonyms, and I stole them all from the Atrocity Archives by Charles Stross because I just needed a good place. So that's a good novel. So I'm going to be Bob or Mr. Howard in the first story. And the other character is Andy, who's a good manager who might sometimes go overboard on theoretical stuff. And so the first story, a failure that should never have happened, starts something like, I'm in a brand new job, and Andy's my new manager, and this company is sort of a company in transition. They're trying to get their security stuff right, but they don't really have a program yet, so they're working on it. So my first day, Andy comes up and says, hey, Bob, I really love your security background. I want to really make use of it. Can you write me a proposal for what we need to improve in our company? I'm just like, great, I'd love to write the proposal. And then he's like, okay, just send me an email when you're done. No details. So I decided to take it from there without asking any further questions. And I do some research. I check out what's going on in the company because I was new there. And I write this gorgeous, beautiful, thick proposal covering everything, with 2 pages of citations, and very technical. It was beautiful. I send it over to Andy and say, hey, Andy, I finished your proposal. Let me know what you think. And a couple days later, he hasn't got back to me. So I'm like, hey, did you get a chance to read that yet? It's like, well, I read through the abstract, but I haven't really been able to get any further. So, and whatever ends up happening is he never reads it. So this was a great opportunity. How often did somebody ask you, come on, make proposals, how can we improve? But then, complete failure because I wrote something that wasn't what they wanted. Yes, try to avoid that much thickness in posts. So, next thing I'm going to do is like a post-mortem of what went wrong here, which is just introspective questions you can ask yourself, and they don't have to be these questions. These are just ones that seem to be generally applicable. So what was the best thing about what happened? What was the worst thing? How could this have been improved? And what could I have done differently? Well, in this case here, the best thing was that I did research and figured out what the company needed in terms of security. And the worst thing was no one read it. And how could this have been improved? Well, probably I should have been shorter, clearer, maybe given them a PowerPoint. This company loved PowerPoints. And maybe focus on 1 or 2 important changes instead of flooding them with a whole list, because that overwhelms people. And so in terms of what I could have done differently, I could have been curious. When I first got the assignment, instead of just saying, great, I could have said, oh, what areas are you interested in? Or do you have something specific in mind? And known who I was talking to, which I sort of already touched on, which was keep it short, easy to follow, and focus on the benefit to the company, which is what management types generally like. But this little failure is what got me started thinking about security culture to begin with and how hard it is to make anything change. And so this is a good point to just do a brief overview of what literature says about security culture before going on to some more stories. So if you just go to Google and type in culture definition, this is what you get. The behaviors, beliefs, values, and symbols of a group that are passed along by communication and imitation from one generation to the next. And if you do the same with security, you get the state of being free from danger or threat. So we can just derive really quickly, security culture is behaviors, beliefs, values, and symbols of a group that help them be free from danger. And the important thing in this is actually that word group for culture, because there is no culture for one person. You have to have multiple people for there to be culture. And so if you're looking at how you can change the culture the security culture in a company or something, you're looking at those group behaviors and values. So culture requires people, and we can use NOLACON as an example. And so yeah, if we're a group of people, so there is a culture here which would be different in our behaviors and beliefs than random tourists on the street. Okay? And some of those ways it would be different is probably, we all probably have better passwords than them. That's a behavior. And also, within any corporation or group, you have the main culture, but you have subgroups which people belong to, and those each have their own culture. So here at NOLACON, we have our sponsors, our organizers, staff, speakers, attendees, etc. And an important thing about the subgroup culture is if they have very strong subgroup culture, then it can be hard to change the whole group culture because the subgroups will resist changing. Okay, so briefly, there's also a hierarchy in all these cultures. And depending on where you are, you're allowed to do different actions. And a lot of times if you step out of line, like if this was a wolf pack, which has a hierarchy, and you stepped out of line, you'd get beaten up by the other wolves. With people, we're generally more civilized, but similar things. And I just made up a little hierarchy for NOLACON, which could or could not be correct. But I put the organizers at the top. They're like telling most people what to do. And there's overlap between groups. And as I show, the sponsors and the speakers both have some chance of influencing regular attendees. The sponsors do it by incentivizing you. You know, there's a great drawing for a Atari thing out there, so you changed your behavior by giving them your card and talking to them. And the speakers by maybe saying something that's influential. But if you step out of where you are in the hierarchy, then you can get in trouble when you're trying to change culture. So what are the ways you can change the culture? And that's by either changing the people, the technology, or the policies. And by people, I do mean literally changing the people in the group. So adding new people or removing people. And a quick example, if you have the group of people who get together every Saturday to play Axis and Allies, you know, then you add 2 new people to it, and maybe these 2 new people, they love Axis and Allies, but they also want to play another game, Betrayal at the House on the Hill. So then you change the culture. You're not just the group who plays Axis and Allies on Saturday, you're the group who plays Axis and Allies or Betrayal at the House on the Hill. If you change the technology, so there the technology is a board game in that example. We could change it to a LAN game or using a gaming system, and you've changed the culture. And if you change the policies, policies can be written or unwritten. So like our gaming group, they probably don't have any written policies. But there may be an unwritten policy that you always bring beer to the other person's house. And somebody may say, hey, I can't drink beer anymore because it's too fattening. And so they start bringing light beer, changing the culture. All right, so a quick side story on policy enforcement. And this case, this is after the first story happened. I was given an assignment to write some policies on secure coding and PCI compliance. And I thought it sounded great, and so I didn't fall into the trap I did in the first story of making it too long or anything. I got it into 5 short sentences that if you followed it, you'd be PCI compliant. And I had extra detail and stuff, and I was really happy about it. I was like, okay, these people need this. They need to know how to do some of this right. They're hard at input sanitization, you know, etc. And I was thinking all the code was going to change, but because there was no enforcement, people said they read it, they signed off on it, nobody changed anything. So you have to do something to either positively or negatively reinforce your policies, or no one's going to do anything. So I can't say I'm really in favor of too much negative reinforcement. You don't want people scared that they're going to lose their job if they report a security incident, because then they won't. They'll just try to cover it up and it'll be harder to figure out. So I do like positive reinforcement when possible. But sometimes you have to at least have some sort of negative feedback. All right, so I stole this graph from Josh Moore's book on job reconnaissance, because I think there's something to be said about this type of management and the organization size into how you can change culture. And so when you start off a company, at the very beginning when you're tiny, you have like cowboy-style management. I'm the owner, I say what goes. And if you want to change the culture there, you just have to talk to the owners and get them on board. And then when they go bigger, one person cannot just be in charge like that. So you have trust-based management, which is when every person there is delegated responsibility and trusted to do it. And then you get even bigger and you hire more people and you can't trust everyone. Someone's going to do something stupid. You're going to have to add policies and have a hierarchy because, well, some people are going to be stupid. And that's when you get lightly structured management. And that's when it starts getting harder to change culture, because you have to stay within the hierarchy, follow the rules. But it's still very doable. And when you get into something highly structured, it's been around for a long time, then you really do need to stay in your little box, and there are probably 60,000 people in your company. And it's pretty impossible to change the corporate culture unless you are that person who's in the position of like the security officer who's allowed to be changing it. So if you're trying to change it and you're not in that position, it could be really tough. And you'd probably be better off trying to change your subgroups, like your department's culture, and hoping someone recognizes that, how great that your subgroup has changed, and moving on. All right. So I was going to now get to story 2. And I'll be Bob again. And then we have Harriet, who's a really bad manager. Some really clever coworkers who are Pinky in the brains. The interim security head, who's Harry. Fred from accounting, who's the person who's doing a job they have no clue about. If it's dangerous, they will kill themselves. The auditors, who are internal compliance. And Angleton, who's a smart, tough higher-up. And then again, we have Andy, who's the nice higher-up manager. All right, so this one's called Persistence in the Wake of Oblivion. And it starts with me going to a meeting with Harriet. It's supposed to be my yearly review, but Harriet's no longer my boss, so we're just going to be making pleasant chit-chat because nothing she says really matters at this point. And so she's like, Bob, tell me about your current projects. And so I do for a bit, and I said, so Harriet, what exciting things are you working on? She's like, well, there is this one cool thing that we're working on. Fred from accounting actually came up with the idea. It's really cool. Oh, what is that? Well, we found out a way to get rid of all those password reset requests that we always get calling customer service. Oh, how are you going to do that? Oh, it's easy. We're going to get rid of the passwords. What? How are you going to do that? Oh, well, we're just going to have them enter their first and last name, birth date, and zip code. It'll be great. Well, what if we have 2 customers with the same name, birthday, and zip code? Oh, we don't. We checked. It's fine. What about the fact you might know that information for someone else? Could be a security problem? No, it's fine. Fine. Okay. Who's working on it? Oh, Pinky's going to work on it. It's great. So Harriet's a very difficult person. So it's a good idea to not try to change her mind. Difficult people, it just starts hostilities. So I backed away from that and got information and decided to take it elsewhere. So when you're trying to make a decision and you don't know what to do, you can do a PreMortem, which ask yourself questions to sort of figure out what steps to take. So in this case, what's the best case scenario? And that's that the business pulls this really silly idea. And what's the worst case? Not pulling the idea. What am I feeling? Annoyed. And why do I ask what I'm feeling? And that's because if I'm angry or upset in any way, I might do something really stupid based on that. And if I make myself acknowledge what I'm feeling, I'm a lot less likely to act on that feeling and do something really stupid. And what steps do I take? Well, I'll talk to Pinky, see if he can take care of it. So that's what I do. I say, hey, Pinky, I just was with Harriet and heard about this passwordless thing. I think it sounds like it might be a bad idea. What do you think? Yeah, well, I had some reservations on that. I actually sent an email out to Harriet and the auditors, and Harriet sent something back, said it was fine, and the auditors never said anything. So, I'm not sure what to do. Oh, well, I think so what I do is I just decide to go take it to Harry, the interim security person. He's interim because this company is trying to start a big security program, but they haven't actually found the head yet, so he's the interim person. And I'm friends with him, so I decide just to jump over and talk to Harry, see if he can take care of it. Yes, there's a lot of running around in the story. So Harry, have you heard about this passwordless thing? And I find out he hasn't, so I tell him about it, and then he immediately sees the problem. And we sit there and we brainstorm how to take advantage of this for a few minutes, and he says, all right, yeah, I can take care of this for you. Just get whoever has problems to email me, or just send out an email and tell them if they have a problem with canceling it, to reply back. I'll completely take care of it, but I'm sort of busy, and I'm going to be leaving the company in a few weeks, so you need to do it fast. Which is an annoying thing, but I go back to Pinky and have him send it out, since I'm really not supposed to be involved in this. And so he does. And we wait patiently. And yeah, nobody sends back anything, which is a little weird, although it was near a holiday, and obviously that always gets you poor responses. So Harry leaves the company and it's not fixed. And so the next step is actually me ranting to Pinky and the Brains and saying, hey, this is just really annoying. And the Brains says, well, we should need to go up a level, elevate it up to Andy, who's the next higher up, Harriet's boss, and make sure he knows what's going on. So we do that. We elevate to Andy, explain the situation to him. He doesn't quite get it the way Harry did, but he sees that there's a problem. And he wants us to document that we've at least advised everyone not to do this, although he doesn't quite go for the completely saying no to the business the way I would. But yeah, he wants to cover our butts, and so he wants us to send everyone out another email. There's a lot of emailing here. And say that this is a bad idea. And we do that. And we start waiting patiently again, and we don't get a response from the auditors. But there's a meeting next week, and with Fred from accounting and Pinky, and what happens is he's really quite upset. He doesn't understand what's going on, why we're questioning the business's ideas, and he's upset. So at this point, we're all upset too. So it's time to think about what to do, and we do another little PreMortem, and we still want the business to pull the idea. The worst case is not pulling the idea. And at this point, I feel like getting up and letting the company implement this. What steps do we take? We actually elevate to Angleton, who, in our hierarchy at this company, he's our boss's boss's boss at this point, about the highest person up we can feel that we can go talk to without breaking, the rules that we're allowed to do. So we do that. We explain it to him. He says he's completely taking it out of our hands. He looks up some people in the auditors and shows them how easy it is to come up with this information. And sends it to them. And yes, it gets taken care of just like that. So there's a little bit of waiting still, but it gets corrected. So just a quick look, what happened here, what could have been improved. What was the best thing? That we got it stopped through persistence and elevating. The worst thing was the length of time. It was several month process. And what could we have improved? Better communication, possibly to keep the business from getting upset, or improve the speed of the response. And what could we have done differently? Well, we knew the auditor was well known for disliking long emails, so maybe not have sent a long email. Try something short and snappy, or just picked up the phone and did a call and asked for a meeting about the compliance issue to try to get things moving faster. All right. So story 3 is about raising security awareness in developers. And in this one, we're evaluating Sonar for static analysis of code. It's something I'm doing. And this is something I already thought they needed, was more security awareness. But as I'm going around, I see Sonar picks up something. I'm looking at the code around it. I see an interesting comment. I don't know if you can read that. But it says, attempt to load their username and password from cookies. The values are decrypted using strong cryptography for enhanced security. Well, that catches my eye. So I'm like, oh, well, what are they doing? Well, it's hidden in the next class under, so I go to the next class. And then we get, this class uses strong cryptography for enhanced security in the comment at the top. They really like that phrase, strong cryptography for enhanced security. Anyone want to take a guess what crypto algorithm I find they're using here that they call strong cryptography? Yeah. No, not quite, but no. Yes, they were using single des, and somebody thought it was strong cryptography. I actually had to look up in the source control when this was written, because I was like, could this possibly have been written long enough ago that that would have been okay? But it was 2007, so it was a while ago, but they should have known better. So I decided that was the last straw, so to speak, on the developer training, or lack of. And so my response, after I laugh hysterically, caused myself to have an asthma attack, grab the inhaler, is to write an email first saying, hey, we have to get this des out of our code. It was broken in 1998. It takes, what, a second to brute force? You know, it's not security. It's just pretending. And two, whoever thinks this is obviously shouldn't be working on our code. We need to have some training. And well, the response is, well, we'll try to get that changed as soon as possible, but we don't have the money for training. So I'm like, well, I could work out some training. Well, we don't have the time to put you on it right now. So my PreMortem of what I should do. The best case scenario is that we want them to train their developers on security. The worst is someone keeps on thinking des is strong crypto. And what am I feeling? I'm actually feeling very ready for action. And what do? I create some training in my free time. I teach a voluntary group at lunch, and I get metrics to show the efficacy, which is actually quite a bit. So a bit on metrics if you're doing training. There are two types of metrics you can get. Your learning metrics, which measure what you did on the learning activity, which can be like doing a survey before and after, and then you can compare the results to see how their opinions and things have changed, or do a knowledge test at the end. And then there's the results metrics, which measure your change in behavior. And that's when you get a baseline before, like, for example, if you're doing phishing, you see how many people click on the phishing emails. Or in this case, how many security bugs are there in static analysis. And then after the training, you can then run these again and look for improvement. So I actually created a nice little insecure Java app, because as far as I know, there aren't any really insecure Java apps that anyone's done. If anyone knows of any, I'd love to hear about them. But it was called the Damn Vulnerable Overpoweringly Cute Cat app, where you could share cute cat pictures with people and comment on them. And you had a private cute cat picture, which other people weren't allowed to see because it was too cute and such. So, but then here's the survey. I don't know how readable that is. This is an actual example somebody filled in for me. And the questions are, like, on a scale from 1 to 5, how knowledgeable are you on secure coding practices? True or false, to your knowledge, have you ever coded something that was insecure? I put this one up here on purpose because this was the one with the comment. If I did, I wasn't aware, is what that says. Which was sort of the point of that question, was hopefully that after learning about secure coding, you'd realize you probably had coded something insecure. Then on a scale of 1 to 5, how important is it to make sure your code is secure? And I consider security in coding what % of the time. And then after the class, I had people answer 2 true or false questions that I will be able to use this information to improve the security of the code I write. And I have already used this information to improve the security. So my results on that. So on the scale of 1 to 5, how knowledgeable are you? We had a before average of 2.25 and an after average of 2.7. A little bit of improvement. And to your knowledge, have you ever coded something insecure? We went from 50% to 80% true, which was nice. How important is it? We had a before 4.25 and after 4.4. And how often do you think about security when coding? 60 to 66. All right. And then I will be able to use this information to improve the security of the code I write, 100% true. And I've already used this to improve the security of the code I write, 20% true. So a note on this, this was a small company. There were 20-some developers altogether. So there was a voluntary group. I got 7 to show up for the first lunch. And then somewhere in the middle, we dropped down to 3, and then we went back up to 5. So their numbers are not statistically significant. But still, metrics are always a nice thing to show people when you're trying to convince them to go with a program. So after this is done, I should gather up these metrics, and I try to say, hey, look. They also, the other note I wanted to make here was they didn't improve as much as you might think, like 60 to 66% and 2.2 to 2.25 to 2.5 or whatever. They seemed very minimal improvement, and I think that's because the people who would give up their lunches to go learn about security are probably the people who are already a little more security conscious. So there was less improvement than there would have been if it was everyone. But yeah, I send this off. I say, hey, I really think we should look into doing this training. I could do something formally for everyone. Look, here are the results. And they were like really happy with the results, really glad we did the lunch and learn, but still thought we didn't have time. So yeah, enter the PCI auditors. I love talking to the auditors, to be honest. I'm probably the only one who ever voluntarily says, hey, I want to work with the auditors. But yes, after speaking with the PCI auditors, they recommended the secure coding class and that I teach it. And people listen to your external auditors. So you can get them to suggest something. Normally your company will implement it. Or at least that's my experience. And so then after they made that recommendation, then it was like solidly down. I was going to do this. And then when we were planning this, company finally got their new security officer. I talked to them about getting this done, and they were really impressed, and they wanted me to help out with all sorts of other security awareness programs, which was great. So got me the opportunity to actually work on culture everywhere. So that story, which started out as it was going to be a complete failure, did completely turn itself around, which is nice. So, and I did that at least 15 minutes faster than I did practicing at home right there. So, but luckily we started late. So, I will say my conclusions are that you should, 1, consider your company before trying to change the security culture and see what would work. And keep your actions within those allowed if you're in a tight hierarchy, because you don't want to get yourself into trouble. You can use a post-mortem to analyze failures or a pre-mortem to make the best decision midway. And adjust your questions. I mean, mine were just suggestions. You know, do whatever works for you. And yeah, if you can't get permission to run a program, you can always try doing something voluntary. And I still really believe in getting metrics to show that they work, even though it didn't work in my case. I think it will work with some people. I love metrics. I can't be the only one. And yes, use external auditors to your advantage, because no one wants to deal with the auditors. Generally, it can be really easy to be the person who explains your policies to them, because other people don't want to spend days in meetings. Of course, you may not want to either, but if you think you're like using them to your advantage, you might then see it differently. So some resources. I will totally mess up this guy's name in the first one, but the book Build a Security Culture by, anyone know how to pronounce his name? That's probably it, Kai Rohr. It's a good framework type book. It doesn't go into the specifics of what should be in a security culture, but just how to set up like a framework of, for whatever part of the security culture you want to change, this is how you can go about changing it. And it has a lot of good background information. The security culture framework also has a lot of good information, like especially on metrics and how to get good metrics and set those up. Building an Information Security Awareness Program by Bill Gardner and Valerie Thomas is a very thorough book about all the different pieces you want to have put together. And I personally found some information you could extrapolate from Chris Hadnagy's and Michelle Fincher's book, Fishing Dark Waters. It does all focus on corporate phishing programs, but you can actually apply some of that in other ways. And since I used his chart, I put up Josh Moore's Job Reconnaissance book there as a resource. And that was all I had. Any questions? Yeah. I think 6 is actually the recommended number if you're trying to train people on something. I've read that that's actually the best number to use is 6 sessions to really learn it over a period of time, divided out over 6 weeks. Hey.
Were you generally, for these sessions, are you generally going to the system code, or are you actually teaching?
Well, what I was doing was, it was sort of like a combination of, I was starting with some insecure code and then showing, hey, this is insecure, this is how I know it's insecure, and this is how we fix it. It was a combination of stuff. So there was some, this is exactly how we fix it using Java like we do here, but then there was also some of just, this is what makes this bad to begin with, some more general stuff.
And are all your developers in these sessions, are they coming from, are they coding in the same environment, or really don't necessarily know what environments?
Well, at this office, pretty much everyone does Java. I mean, there's some, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, that sort of thing too. But I mean, it's almost all Java-based stuff, Java MVC. Although, I love doing things like that for any language, personally. Anything else? Anyone have any good stories about trying to change culture? No? Or funny stories? I always try to come up with the best examples, but no. I did speed through that a bit. I hope I was clear, but well, I guess that's all. Thank you all.